I'm Allison Brown. I'm a mental health therapist and a coach, and I'm on a mission to redefine self-care. Hello, I am Mary Allison Brown, and I am so excited to officially welcome you to the SelfCare Redefined podcast. In 2018, I started my podcasting journey with the Life Unboxed podcast, and it was a really fun ride. At the time that I started the Life Unboxed podcast, I was 2 years post-divorce and really on this journey of allowing myself to own what I wanted and to be who I really am for the first time really in my adult life. And so the Life Unboxed podcast was really all about rejecting the labels that other people put on us, the labels that we put on ourselves, and giving ourselves permission to live outside of the box. And it was a really, really fun learning curve. I was just learning how to create a podcast. I was just learning how to do an interview. And that was such an important thing in my life, and it was so much fun. And then we got to 2020, and the podcast got put on hold, and then COVID happened. And so the podcast got put on indefinite hold. And I wasn't finding myself really inspired to do any new episodes. I was finding myself with a million other things going on, and ultimately feeling like the Life Unboxed podcast was actually not super aligned with the truth of my message and my mission. And so no new episodes happened. It just didn't happen. And I was okay with that, and I didn't know, what was going to happen with it. I knew that I loved podcasting. I knew that I loved this process, but I also knew that if I was going to start podcasting again, there had to be more purpose around it. There had to be more intention. So fast forward to December 2020, and I was giving a training around sustainable self-care to early learning professionals, and talking about how to really create your own sustainable self-care plan. At the end of the training, the woman who put that together said to me, Mary Allison, I just need to have you every single day, and I know that that's not a choice, but how do I get more of this? How can I get more? Do you have a podcast? Do you have a YouTube channel? Where do I find you? I need you in my life. And in that moment, I knew that the Life Unboxed podcast was done. I knew in that moment that I had to come back to podcasting with a purpose on purpose. And in that instant, I knew that I would be creating a new version of my podcast for you. It is called SelfCare Redefined, and I am so excited to change the way that we've done things, to shake things up, and to really change the game for this podcast, and also on a bigger scale for how we think about self-care and what self-care means to us individually and collectively. So here we are, episode 1 of SelfCare Redefined. And I want to share this with you because I love to say that I am on a mission to redefine self-care as mental health hygiene. So in this episode, which is really the introduction to the new podcast, the new format, I'm going to share with you why I'm on that mission, sort of where this comes from for me, as well as some guiding truths that guide my work, my personal definition of self-care, the 3 B's of self-care, and the format. What can you expect? If you hit that subscribe button, subscribe to SelfCare Redefined, what types of things are you going to be hearing? So that is what this first episode is going to be all about. a reintroduction to me, a reintroduction to this brand new thing that we are creating together. I'm so excited about this. I do get excited a lot because we have self-care all wrong. All wrong. We think of self-care as being these things that we do if we have time. So we think of self-care as being a nice to have, not a must have. And in my opinion, self-care is actually mental health hygiene. Self-care is non-negotiable, it's essential. However, it's not the self-care that you're going to find on any Pinterest self-care checklist, because some checklist that tells you take a bubble bath, get a mani-pedi, do whatever other kind of fluffy self-care things you find on a self-care checklist. That's not true self-care. True self-care requires a level of self-awareness. It requires looking within, asking yourself what you need, being honest with yourself about that answer, and then meeting your own needs. Self-care, as the way that we think about it typically, isn't actually self-care. It's this whole crazy industry that we spend billions of dollars on every year to try to relax, while we completely neglect the things that actually support mental and emotional health and well-being. And to me, that's what self-care is really all about. Self-care is really all about what are the things that help you feel good, what are the things that are supportive to your mental health, and do you do them intentionally, and do you do them on purpose? So let me share with you some of my guiding truths that are the things that really drive my work. And there's a train going by. I'm sorry if you can hear that noise. And that is something that is out of my control, so we are not going to worry about it. The first is what I just said. Self-care is mental health hygiene. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. As a mental health therapist, I start all of my clients when they come to see me with the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. It's a framework that I created that are 5 things that are evidence-based things that are supportive of mental health. If you're not doing those things every day, that is a great place to start. If you want to learn more about the 5 pillars themselves, stay tuned, because in this new format, my goal is that the podcast becomes a resource library for you. And the first series that we'll be doing is a series on the 5 pillars of foundational self-care. I will be sharing those pillars with you in great detail, and then I will be inviting incredible guests in each of the areas to come and shed some light on why those particular things are so important for mental health. So stay tuned, that's coming up. The next guiding truth that I want to share with you is that self-care is an act of service. Why? Because everything that requires your energy to thrive requires you to thrive. So one of the things that I hear very often is that people do not take good care of themselves because they have other people who need their time, who need their energy. And so moms in particular say, I don't have time to take care of myself because my kids need me. I need to take care of my family, and I have to work, and there's no time left over for me. Well, if you are drained and depleted, I can promise you that you are not bringing yourself, your best self, to any of those other relationships. You're not showing up as a mom the way that you want to show up. You're not showing up as a partner the way you want to show up. You're not showing up for your work the way you want to show up. So I'm going to say that one again. Self-care is an act of service, because everything that requires your energy to thrive requires you to thrive. And right along with that, my next guiding truth is this: you only get to be the best version of yourself for the people and things that you love and value most when you take the best care of yourself. And there's no cookie cutters for that. Taking the best care of you might look different than taking the best care of me, and that is okay, and that is why a checklist is so unhelpful. The next guiding truth I'd love to share is that the way that you take care of yourself, how well you take care of yourself, is literally the foundation upon which you build the rest of your life. Now, one of the things that people tell me very often is that good self-care for them is something that involves quality time with another person. Now, yes, we are meant to be in community. We are built to be in community. And when I'm thinking of self-care, I really want to take that even further back to basics. I want you to start thinking of this as concentric circles, and you are inside that first circle. You have to take care of you, because when you take the best care of yourself, then guess what? The best version of you shows up in your most important relationships. And so that next circle outside of you would be your relationship, if you're in one, with a spouse or a life partner. That would be the next circle. That is the next piece of this foundation. And then the family, and then the work, and then the community, right? So if you're feeling anxious, off balance in some way, overwhelmed, then we're zooming back in and starting with what we can control and addressing that first circle first. And those 5 pillars of foundational self-care are really designed to do that for you. The next thing I want you to start thinking about, the guiding truth, that self-care is really all about energy management. When you do things that fill you up, when you do things that inspire you and energize you, you show up differently. So how are you managing your energy today? What does that look like? And the final guiding truth that I want to share for this first episode, before I give you too many tidbits all at once, is that when it comes to effective self-care, small, consistent daily actions will always create the biggest change. So one of the things that trips people up when it comes to self-care is saying, I don't have the time. It doesn't take a lot of time. Like, where do we get that idea? It doesn't need to take a lot of time. I encourage my clients to start with 5 minutes a day, because if we overreach, try to do an hour of self-care going from 0 to 60, that's a setup for failure. That's a setup for negative self-talk. We don't want any of that. We want small, consistent daily actions. It's about building habits. It's about being consistent, and it's about doing things intentionally that support your mental health. So those are the guiding truths that I want to share with you for today. And I also really want to share with you the way that I define self-care. So not a bubble bath if you haven't gotten that yet. But self-care to me is this. Self-care means identifying how you want to feel and prioritizing the things that make you feel that way. So all of these concepts and the skills that you need to put them into action in your own life are inside the free 5-day sustainable self-care challenge. I believe that the challenge is one of the best pieces of work that I've done. It's free. It will always stay free, because I want as many people as I can possibly reach to start redefining self-care for themselves, to redefine what it means for them to show up for themselves, so that they can show up for their important relationships and show up for their work, because that's how we create a ripple effect that will change the world. So if you're not inside the challenge yet, go there. You can go to either maryallisonbrown.com/challenge or selfcareredefined.com, and you'll find the challenge there. And I would love to see you inside. Now let's talk for just a minute about the 3 B's of self-care. So the 3 B's: beliefs, behaviors, and boundaries. So the beliefs piece is really important. We're going to go more in depth into these things in a future episode. But for today, I really want you to start thinking about how these things affect how well you take care of yourself in your own life. Belief systems, super important. If you have a belief system that tells you that taking time for yourself is selfish, and that if you dare to do that, you should feel guilty, you are not going to take care of yourself. Very simple. something that we don't think about very often, but your belief systems have to support your own mental health and well-being. A lot of redefining self-care is deconditioning what we have been taught. We've been very conditioned to look outside of ourselves. We don't collectively trust our inner knowing very much at all anymore. And we've been really conditioned that self-care is selfish, and that self-care means that we are prioritizing our own needs above other people's. And in my perspective, we need to prioritize our needs first. It does not mean that you think your own needs are more important than someone else's. What it does mean, though, is that your needs are also important. They're equally as important. And that is such an important shift. So asking yourself, what are your beliefs that are supportive of self-care, and what are the beliefs that are maybe holding you back a bit? When it comes to behaviors, this just means, what are you doing to take care of yourself? What are you doing or not doing? Looking at those 5 pillars of foundational self-care is a great place to start with this. And then finally, the boundaries piece is really important, because no matter how much you believe that you deserve to take care of yourself and how much you have the behaviors locked in, if you're unwilling or unable to create boundaries that are protective of the space and time that you need to do that, you won't be able to do it. So, like I said, we're going to go into all of those things in future episodes, but I just wanted you to be aware that those 3 B's of self-care are a really important framework for starting to actually shift what's happening in your life. Now, one of the things that I want to share with you, as this new podcast is launching, the new SelfCare Redefined membership site is also launching. The membership site is going to be an amazing community where we have these conversations in greater depth. When you join us inside the membership, what you're going to get is access to Journaling 101, if journaling is going to be a part of your self-care routine. You are going to get access to Transforming Negative Self-Talk, skills for everybody inside that course, and you're going to be invited to exclusive monthly Zoom calls. So the calls are going to include a monthly mini training on an aspect of self-care, a monthly Q&A session where we just can chat, I can answer your questions, help you work through things in real time. Because sometimes what I see happening for people is that the knowledge is great, but knowledge is not power. Applied action is power. The knowledge doesn't do you any good until you act on it. And so the membership is going to give you the space to have those conversations, help you really determine how you can apply these concepts to your own life. And then the other thing that we're going to be doing every single month is an emotional freedom technique tapping party. I love EFT. I use it in my own life. I use it with my clients. And I want to share that magic with you all inside the membership in a way that can be really helpful to what you're dealing with. There's also going to be some after the episodes featuring some of our amazing guests coming back to have a conversation with you and a live Q&A session. There's also going to be some other goodies, but I don't want to spoil it all. If you want to learn more about that, please go to maryallisonbrown.com/membership. And then finally, the last thing that I want to share with you today is just the format of this new podcast, what you can expect. Lots of me chatting with you. There'll be lots of solo episodes sharing what I know about burnout, self-care, compassion, fatigue, and everything that goes along with it. We will have some amazing guest experts. We will also have some Q&A episodes. And the last type of episode is going to be self-care coaching episodes. And those episodes are going to be where a volunteer comes on the episode with me, and together we work through the barriers that they're experiencing in their own life that prevent them from taking action in regards to consistent daily self-care, mental health, hygiene. These episodes are going to be really, really fun because they're going to help you hear the way that we can work through those things in real time. And so I'm hoping that those episodes really serve you as well. If you're interested in applying to be on a self-care coaching episode, I would absolutely love to have you. You can go apply on the link at maryallisonbrown.com/podcast. And other things you can do there are submit a question for a Q&A episode, and you can nominate a guest, and that can be yourself or someone else. So we really want to think about, if you're thinking of a new guest, how does this support mental health and well-being and self-care as mental health hygiene? So that is it for today's episode. I'm so excited to welcome you back. I'm so excited to co-create SelfCare Redefined with you. And I really do hope that you will join me inside of the membership, where we're going to have community, collaboration, connection, and conversation around everything that we're talking about here on the podcast. I'm Allison Brown. I am your host, and I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you so much. I will see you on the next episode.